Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's Family Ministry Moment. This one's kind of on the go. There's a reason for that. Do you ever notice that summertime kind of makes it so that our normal cadence of life falls apart? Our summertime comes around and our routines kind of change. Well, especially for those of us with families. If we've got kids, whether they're in grade school, whether they're in college, our schedules tend to change. Even if you're grandparents, you notice that your grandkids are around more. You got a little bit more time on their hands, and sometimes you end up having to grand babysit, right? And you're hanging out with the kids more. But what happens with all that, with a little bit of that change, is our routines kind of fall apart. And what happens with that is that we're just not the same anymore. Do you ever notice when you don't get up in the morning at the same time every day, when you just kind of change your schedule up and you're not doing the same things, you just feel different? Sometimes for the better, especially if routines are healthy for you, but sometimes for the worse. I know for me, if I don't wake up around the same time every day, do the same things kind of every day, if I don't do my normal cadence in the morning, it kind of throws me off, especially if I don't take my meds. I mean, I don't talk about this much, but I became type 2 diabetic a few years back, and I gotta get up, I gotta have breakfast, I gotta take my meds, I gotta work out, I gotta do all those things to make sure that I am a fully functional human being. And I'm sure each of you has something like that too, right? We're all human, we've all got bodies that are imperfect, and we've got things we gotta do to maintain them. It doesn't matter how old you are, these things just kind of happen.
Here I want to take a look at today comes from the book of Proverbs. Let's close Psalms, go to Proverbs. Let's go to chapter 3. We're actually going to jump over to verse 5. And it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't rely on your own intelligence. Know him in all your paths, and he will keep your ways straight." Verse 7 says, "Don't consider yourself wise. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil." It's interesting in this piece of scripture, a lot of times we think, well, God's telling us that we're not real that bright and we can't really figure things out. That's not really it. What intelligence is the information we've gathered over time, the fact that we understand and know how the whole world works. And that's not true. We still have a lot to figure out. If we rely on God and we acknowledge that God's present with us, we're actually showing more intelligence, knowing that the Creator God is on our side, on our daily tasks, on our daily paths. Now in verse 7 it says, "Don't consider yourself wise," meaning wisdom is something that we gain over time. If we continue to remember that we are perpetual students, always needing to learn, that we fear the Lord, meaning we respect the Lord, understanding that God knows it, and that we can go to the person who knows it all, that is wisdom, right? True wisdom, true intelligence is knowing that we don't have all the answers, and remembering that God's on our side and with us through life is so important. It's so critical for us to remember that our routines have to have God in the midst.
So raise a mental hand. How many of y'all need that? You need that routine to make it happen. We're in youth group, we've been talking about, we actually started this thing on youth on Wednesday nights now, to give our students something different to do. Actually, it's going to be moving forward into the fall. We're going to be launching small groups, and I'm giving the high schoolers something to look forward to as they start into fall again, where they get to have small groups in their neighborhoods. But in preparation to that, we're doing a kind of Wednesday night hangout, and we do some games and some small group time. And the things we're talking about this summer is creating good habits, spiritual and physical. And one of the first things we talked about is how we hang out with God. It's called habits, Habits, and the first letter H to talk about hang out with God. And when we hang out with God, we're more intentional with our time. When we recognize that we have to hang out with our friends, our family, our partners, we realize that we have to be intentional with our time. We can't just kind of hope it's going to happen. We have to make sure it happens. We have to plan for it. And if we don't plan for it, it may not happen. We don't put it into our routine. And so we're talking on Wednesday, and I asked the students, what kind of things do you have in your routine that make it so that you can hang out with God? And a lot of them answered, the typical stuff like, I have a Devo time in the morning, or, I talk to God in my prayer time, and the kind of stuff that they've been taught since they were in Sunday school that their parents are probably encouraging them to do. One of the students said something kind of interesting, and they said that I find God wherever I go, and I try to acknowledge God wherever I go. And I found that really interesting. Because if you are hanging out with God wherever you are, you're going to recognize and acknowledge them wherever you are. Think about it this way. If you're hanging out with your partner or you're hanging out with your best friend and say you're walking through the mall, you're going to interact with that person in the way you would normally interact with them because you're in that space. Now, if you're walking through life and you're recognizing that in every interaction you have, God's with you, you're going to act as if God is observing and interacting with you in those moments. So when you're at the cash register interacting with the cashier, if you're on the road driving, that's a cool car. If you're on the road driving and you recognize that somebody cut you off, but you realize God's with you, how's that interaction going to go for you? Are you going to act a little bit differently? Are you going to acknowledge the person driving differently? Are you going to acknowledge the cashier differently? Are you going to treat your students differently? Like, imagine if your kid does something that really makes you angry. Say, father, parents, grandparents, caretakers listening. One of your kids does something that just makes you really angry, and you have that moment where you're about to fly off the handle. You're supposed to get angry, or you're going to discipline them. If you're recognizing that God's with you, how's your interaction with your kid going to be? Is it going to be a little bit different as if you were acting with them like nobody's watching? I'm going to be honest, as a parent, I recognize that's true for me. That I treat my kid differently when she makes me angry, when she's around other people, versus when she's alone. And that's on me. That does happen every once in a while. I try really hard to be kind of even, but that doesn't always happen. So, how can I make that better? When I am intentionally recognizing that God's with me everywhere, I can make that better. Man, I learned something that day with that student. Here's the thing. I know that. I know that God's with me all the time. But just hearing one of the students say that, I realized, man, that's so true. That's a great reminder. And that's the beauty of small group, right? That's the beauty of taking time to hang out with other Christians and other people we can talk about life with. And here's that moment. Even I was taught in that moment. I'm bringing the lessons to the students, trying to bring a great word to them and encourage them. And here this student is encouraging me. Isn't that always how it is? And so I want to remind y'all that it's so important that we stick to our routines during crazy times. And I know that we're living in a time in our world and in our country where things are just turning upside down. One of the ways that we can remember to be healthy ourselves, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, is we stick to our routines. We try to make sure that we are our best selves so we can present our best selves forward no matter what challenge is coming in front of us. Making sure that we're hanging out with God. Making sure that we're reminding ourselves that God's present with us in every situation. So that when we are stressed out and things hit us and we're just pushed to the end, God's there to support us through it all. That's a reminder to you that in order for you to learn from each other, you got to be together. So I hope to catch you in church on Sunday. I hope to see you at one of the services, 9 o'clock or 11:15. I hope to catch you at Sunday school at 10 o'clock, or youth group at 4 o'clock, or if you're a student, on Wednesday afternoons. So I'm hoping to catch with y'all. This is Manu, doing things a little bit differently today, because I'm trying to stick to my routine and get to my places on time. And sometimes even making these videos, I kind of just get distracted, and I'm like, I gotta make the video. Guess what? I gotta be somewhere on time today. So this one is a little bit on the go. Hopefully, I'll catch you on Sunday. This is Manu. See you later.